Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dean Node, and I'm the Business Development Director for eSite Energy. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Obviously, the aim is to give you a little bit of an insight into some of the areas or some of the opportunities where you can obviously save or reduce your energy consumption within the process environment. And of course, obviously, EMS is one of those opportunities. So really what we're going to is focus on those, I suppose, 10 key areas or 10 key requirements for EMS in the food and drinks sector. Actually, before we start, a couple of housekeeping things really. First one being that we do have a large number of people joining us this afternoon, so as such we have had to mute all you listeners down, and of course what that means is that you're not able to field or ask any questions. So what we'll do is at the end of the presentation, I'll leave my email address on the closing slide, so please feel free to field any questions through that, or I'm more than happy to discuss any questions or any more information you require. So the second thing is we do have a hands-up feature, so if you are experiencing issues with the audio or with of course your visuals, again please use the hands-up feature, and one of my colleagues will get back to you and hopefully resolve any problems you have. The presentation will probably, I would imagine, take about half an hour to 35 minutes to get through, and hopefully it'll be beneficial to you. Okay, so moving on, the first slide really. Bear with me one moment, seem to be experiencing some difficulties myself. Just getting back at the slide yet. Yeah, sorry about that, as you say. But yeah, just moving on really, just a little bit more information about eSite Energy. So we are a UK-based business. We're based in Cambridge in the UK, and that's where really all of the development occurs. I suppose really we are a global software, and as a global software, we're probably operating in around about 60 different countries. We do have offices in other countries. We do have offices in the US and in Hong Kong as well, and also satellite offices in France and Germany. However, it's actually, I suppose, in terms of what we use, we're commonly really used in the food and drinks sector. And just moving on to some of those customers, really give you a bit of feel for some of those customers. These are all names we've got breweries in there, we've got monsters in there, and of course obviously lots of different food processors in there, and they're all using eSite for many different purposes really. So I suppose what it does do is it gives you a little bit of a feel for the versatility of eSite really, and I suppose what you can achieve with it. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. These, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to really be looking at some of the opportunities with eSite. Within the food and processing industry, and there's actually 6, I suppose, areas that we're looking at. And as I mentioned again earlier, that energy management is one of those opportunities. But really starting with that first area there, process measurement and control. It is essential really to have really good measurement and control within the process environment, if you like, and underlining that very much is if you do have really good controls in place, then of course obviously there's potential of saving up to 10% of consumption. And of course obviously having good controls and automating your processes gives you the ability to be able to determine KPIs more accurately. So moving on then to refrigeration. So refrigeration is probably the biggest consumer of energy within the process environment, and it accounts for around 50% of total electricity. One thing that I'm going to talk about now very much, or briefly mention, is maintenance, and you'll see this is pretty much common to most of these. It's an underlying theme to most of these opportunities really. Having really good maintenance across all of your processes obviously is an opportunity itself, but of course in refrigeration, the better controlled your temperature is, then of course the greater the savings are going to be. Moving on to compressed air now. So compressed air is probably one of the most widely used and I suppose most commonly misused of all the processes within, or all the equipment, if you like, within the process industry. I suppose just revisiting the maintenance thing again, really, in terms of poor maintenance, then one thing that you will experience with compressed air is leaks. And of course, with leaks, then the reservoirs or the tanks or cylinders all drain down, so there's a loss of pressure. So there is a tendency, really, for I suppose people to leave the compressors idling, and this is a massive use of energy. Actually, an idling compressor can use up to 40% of its load at any one time. So again, it's just, I suppose, really an area to think of for those of you out there who do use compressors or compressed air. Moving on to boilers and heat distribution. So really, in terms of steam generation, if you like, I mean, this is probably one of those, I suppose, processes that is used commonly across all subsectors. So in terms of steam generation, again, efficiency is key. A well-maintained system can reduce consumption by up to 30%. So it just gives you a feeling for sort of where some of those major opportunities are. Distillation and drying and heat evaporation. This is, I suppose, really, again, just mentioning equipment maintenance there is just essential, but really, I suppose, the biggest opportunity is waste heat recovery. So waste heat can be recovered in, I suppose, by what we call energy recovery heat exchangers, and these recover heat from, I suppose, hot streams, really, where there's a potential high energy content. Examples might include hot flue gases from diesel generators, or steam from cooling towers, or even wastewater from different cooling processes such as steel or coolant. So I suppose once we've looked at them five, the next area really is energy management, and this is a really, I suppose, potentially a great area for sort of reducing your consumption, because it gives you the ability to be able to identify high consumption or erroneous consumption, and of course, obviously, sort of look at your production as well. But it does provide a high degree of monitoring and targeting, and of course, obviously, analysis as well, being able to really create all your performance analysis charts and like I say, really strictly monitor your processes. The other thing about energy management is it also gives you the ability to access the information, if you like, and this is probably one of the requirements we're going to talk about shortly, actually. But with energy management software, you will have the ability to access your information from remote sources. So it is a really useful tool for sort of looking at your information all the time. So for an AM&T system to be useful, or for an EMS system to be useful in the food and drink sector, then there are, I suppose, what we would call necessary specific functional requirements, and that's really what we're going to look at now. The 10 key requirements really for energy management system in the food and drink section, really, and I suppose really giving consideration to those opportunities that we've talked about, really, and we've talked about sort of measurement and control and refrigeration and compressed air and boilers and heat distribution and of course distillation and drying. But really to take advantage of these opportunities, then these really, what we're looking at, these 10, I suppose, requirements are really give you the ability to optimise your savings, if you like. And the first one there is integration. So of course, obviously, the software will need, I suppose, the ability to take data from multiple different sources, whether that be from your local supplier or from on-site BMS systems or AMR systems, or even from your production systems, if you like, from SCADA or via OPC. So there will be a need to be able to easily integrate your software into the existing infrastructure, and we'll talk about these in detail shortly. The next one there is really the the need to access the information, application accessibility. So you will need a tool really that gives you the ability to really access the information very easily and simply, and again in a way that is convenient with, I suppose, modern living through your iPads or iPhones, that sort of thing. Number 3 there is the ability to really, I suppose, generate top-down reporting and generate sort of your KPIs, essential KPIs at every level, right the way from the company level, right the way through to the, to site level and department level, right the way through to line and plant and meter. So it is about looking at information at every level of your tree. Number 4, probably one of the most important, is project tracking and return on investment, really. So the key thing here really is being able to create your energy policy, if you like, within the software, and then really being able to reconcile all of your opportunities against your policy to identify your return on investment and your payback. And again, we'll look at that in more detail shortly. Then number 5 there is regression and based and multivariable targeting. So of course what you need is something that gives you the capability to generate accurate baselines that are representative of your business, whether you're only looking at simple single variable models, or whether you've got sort of multiple variable models, as you would have in a complex process business with many sites and many, I suppose, complex factors that might affect your processes, and of course your energy consumption. Number 6 is consumption, financial budgeting and reporting. So this is really the suite of reports. So you will really require a standard suite of reports for all of your reporting needs, and really following on from that really is this custom reporting, because of course obviously it's difficult to actually create a software that is everything to every man. So there will be a need to have a software that you can actually sort of generate bespoke reports that of course obviously meet the needs and demands of your business. Next one there is exception-based alarms. So of course obviously a key requirement would be to be able to set alerts around your important data flows, and to really identify where important parameters are exceeded, and that the users can be alerted to where those parameters are exceeded. And we're not just really talking about consumption there, but of course production as well. We need to understand what's happening with our production against our consumption. And then number 9 and 10 really is really sort of dashboards. With user dashboards, you need something that creates, I suppose, a dashboard that is flexible for the and appropriate really to the user level, and that they can sort of just, I suppose, display information that's pertinent to them and their reporting needs. And then of course obviously we've got number 10 there, the corporate dashboards. Of course really what we're looking at now is those dashboards that are front of house for communicating achievements, and of course really displaying the objectives that the company is setting out to achieve against their policy, and where they really want buy-in from the from those, I suppose, the general population of the building as well. Okay, then, so let's move on to integration. Number 1, first requirement really, and we talked about being, I suppose, hardware independent. A key consideration for any EMS system really is cost, and the biggest cost of any EMS system really is actually capturing the information and making that information available for the top end software. So it's essential really that system is able to be easily and simply integrated into the existing infrastructure of the site. So I've just used the term hardware independent. So this is something really that will give you the ability to be able to take data from a multitude of different sources. And we talked about this, very briefly mentioned BMS systems and AMR systems and local suppliers. But if you look at that diagram there on the screen now, and we of course obviously can see different utilities with gas, water and electricity. And then of course we've got other products such as natural gas and air and CO2 and N2 utility meters. And we've also got different protocols there with Modbus and RS485 and of course local area networks. So what it demonstrates clearly there is that of course you need something that can take information from many different sources. And of course actually now with the, I suppose, the onset of information technology in terms of IoT and the Internet of Things, of course that opens up another route of communications. So we really need to think about IoT and being able to get information into the software through the cloud, if you like. Of course, in the process industry where production really versus your energy costs are really under the microscope, you do really need the ability to be able to take production data as well. So of course, obviously, you know, not only is it all your utilities and all your different variables and all that sort of thing, your non-consumptive data, it's your production data as well. So again, just a key requirement there in terms of information into the system. Okay, then so let's talk about application access, if you like, or you know, the data's there when you need it. Of course, all opportunities really are people driven, and they need to access the data when and where it's needed. And I suppose what this means is really is that it's convenient for the user to look at that information. So, you know, you want something that you can actually access data on modern equipment, really, equipment that you have hand in hand, sort of like your iPads or iPhones or tablets, that sort of thing. And of course, obviously, not only accessing the software, but it's also making that information readily available, really. For instance, in energy saving campaigns where you're trying to communicate a message, if you like, at the general population of a site, where you're, I suppose, gaining their buy-in or gaining their support, then you'll need really tools to communicate the larger picture, really, through sort of energy visualization platforms. And of course, obviously, within that sort of environment, it's critical to be able to do that, so you get the support of those people that you're communicating to. Okay, so number 3, top-down reporting. EMS software provides the ability to really create KPIs at every level of your tree. And when we talk about every level, we're talking really from company level at the top through to site level, right the way through to departments, and then really line and equipment at the bottom. And that equipment could be sort of plant equipment, or it could even be sort of a meter monitoring something. Molten Cores is really, I suppose, one of our largest global customers, and they use this technique to identify consumption at every level of their tree. And when we talk about that, like I say, it is really from a single piece of equipment right the way through to company level. So again, in terms of being able to analyse the consumption, of course, you really need to be able to monitor everything at every level to be able to sort of report on it and understand it and manage it. So really the next slide, really, and I pointed this out really in the list, in terms of functionality, really, in my opinion, in terms of functionality, this is probably one of the most important tools. So within the software, what you really want to have the ability to do is to be able to incorporate or integrate your energy policy into the software. So you're actually sort of laying down your, I suppose, objectives in the software. You lay them down in stone. So your energy policy, for example, might be that you want to save 20% of your energy consumption or your energy costs or even your carbon output within the next 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, whatever that time period may be. So So once you've done that, then you really need the ability to be able to measure that policy, and you can do that, with one of these tools by really creating the opportunities within the software. Because every project really has a cost, and of course, obviously, you want to keep that cost down to a minimum. But equally, every project has a return, and it's all about really trying to maximise that return and trying to benefit as much as you possibly can. So when we're looking at this slide, actually, we're looking really from left to right, and we're looking at the forecast savings and the project tracking on the far left there. And you can actually see this is where you can sort of, forecast your savings through your different projects. And you can actually sort of really individually analyse each project. And then when you sort of look into the middle of that picture there, and this is each, I suppose, the status of each project. So you can monitor the project status for all of your opportunities. And this is everything really from inception to approval to implementation, right the way through to completion and ultimately evaluation. So you can see on the far side of the slide there on this summary screen about the opportunity performance. So these tools really enable you to analyse every project really and see how you've performed with it really and how you've performed in terms of costs, and have you reached the return on investment that you'd forecast to reach, and have you achieved the payback that you'd forecast to meet. But more importantly, once you've done that, you can then reconcile them against your policy to see actually how are you doing against your policy over that period of time. These are really, really useful tools. And if you're really serious about monitoring your or saving money against your policy, and this is probably, I would say, an essential tool. Okay, so moving on to regression-based multivariable targeting, pretty much halfway through the list now. So in any industrial environment or in manufacturing environment, and again, we talk about process environments there are many, many complex driving factors that influence consumption and production for that matter as well. A couple of examples there, we're talking about temperature and production, and these are of course, obviously non-consumptive data flows. So we need to consider, if you like, these variable factors, whether they're really, I suppose, measuring a single piece of equipment or a more complex piece of, I suppose, more complex site or multi-building site. So we need to be able to use these tools to create our energy equations, create our baselines. And I suppose it's important really in order to create a baseline, we need to create something that is actually representative of the building or the business or the, if you like, the business demands, so that you can accurately then forecast and budget for the following years. So these tools are really quite important in the grand scheme of things, really. And of course, obviously, moving on to the next slide, in terms of your reporting, without those baselines, then in many cases, some of your reports don't really have a lot of meaning. So really, in terms of consumption, financial budgeting and reporting, these are all examples really of a standard suite of reports that you will need within the EMS software. And again, just reflecting a little bit in terms of top-down reporting, these are the sort of range of tools that you're going to require to identify and analyse consumption and production within an industrial environment, if you like, or process environment. Some of these tools shown really are, of course, we've got minimum and maximum analysis there on the top left hand, and then we've got some electrical analysis tools on the bottom left hand side of the page there, and then of course we've got a linear regression tool on the top right and at the bottom there, an energy analysis page. So you can see you need lots and lots of different tools to be able to effectively monitor your facility and to be able to benefit from some of those opportunities that are available. So just moving on to the custom reporting, and this actually is quite important as well, and I keep saying that, but I suppose all of these requirements are in the list because of their importance. But of course, as I've just mentioned, really, there is a need for a suite of standard reports, and in most softwares, this suite of reports should pretty much cater for pretty much everything you need within your business or within your facility. However, for most EMS software providers, it is, I suppose, again, an impossible task really to meet such a need, because every business has different reporting needs and of course different demands on it, and of course different objectives. So it is difficult to be able to cater for, I suppose, 100% of all our customers' needs 100% of the time. I would actually probably say that we cater for 100% of probably 97% of our customers' needs. But the other 2-3% they do need something special, something bespoke, something outside of the norm. So it's important really within your software to be able to have the freedom or the independence to create those bespoke reports that are really outside of the EMS system, but you are able to import them back into the EMS system, and so that they actually have the same characteristics, if you like, of the standard reports within the software. And when we talk about that, we're really talking about the ability to be able to automatically report and schedule those reports. So if you are looking for a software and you do have some sort of, I suppose, very unusual reporting needs, then ensure that you've got a custom reporting availability in order to, I suppose, not only, like I say, provide the freedom of reporting, but more importantly, so it caters for 100% of all your reporting needs across the business. Okay, then, so exception-based alarms, and again, this is pretty much an essential item really from the EMS. What these do, of course, obviously, they give or alert the user to erroneous consumption, and from again, in terms of erroneous consumption, we're really talking about where, I suppose, parameters, if you like, have been exceeded, or important KPIs, parameters, surrounding important KPIs have been exceeded. So within an EMS, you must have the facility really that allows you, I suppose, or the user to create alarms around specific variables that not only influence probably your consumption, but also influence your production processes as well. And of course, this allows the engineers, or just use the word engineers, but really the users, to explore some of those complex relationships actually that exist between variables and consumption and production. So again, in terms of being able to monitor your site closely without these tools, you're sort of playing catch up all the time. So coming towards the end of the presentation, really, we're on user dashboards now, and again, there's two types of user dashboards. We'll look at there's two types of dashboards, and we'll look at the user dashboards first. But really, within an EMS system, I suppose one of the key requirements really is to ensure that each individual user has I suppose, a user-definable dashboard product which is versatile and enables them to create their own dashboards that are really appropriate to their access level and to their reporting level and really to their layer of reporting, if you like. So in order to be able to do that, they've got to have access to, I suppose, a wealth of different tools, not only sort of all the different templates, but to dials and gauges and to the data flows really, whether they be alarms or whether they be streams of information coming in from meters or from plant equipment or production information. So, you know, and also actually sort of having the ability to be able to access HTML links or hyperlinks outside, so that they also have access to the outside worlds for support purposes or for emergency contact for your local suppliers and that sort of thing. So these dashboards are really important to the user, that they're able to sort of create the dashboards that are perfectly suited to themselves. And then on I suppose, conversely to the corporate or public dashboards, we talked about really the energy or I suppose energy management very much being people driven. So in terms of awareness campaigns and really communicating that message, you know, of the company's aims, if you like, then this is the sort of tool you're going to need. So in any organisation really, where you're trying to talk to the general population of the organisation or the site, then, you know, again in an awareness campaign, then these tools are really, I suppose, required to engage with the building's occupants, and that doesn't matter really whether they're probably, like say, employees or people passing through or whoever they might be. You know, there's an element here of being able to talk to those people. So using these corporate, I suppose, high-level public dashboards, you can provide an insight into the real-time energy usage of that site and able to communicate, you know, like I say, the company's aims and objectives. So what we're looking at there actually on that slide as well is these are sort of typical dashboards that are available not only, you know, at a high level in a, I suppose, a public building, but also online. So you can actually sort of look at your company on your internet browser, and using touchscreen technology or your phone or your iPad, you can actually sort of just look at the high level information by pressing the buttons and looking at probably the areas that are important to you as a visitor or to you as an occupant. So that's really covered off the 10 areas really. I suppose just very much in summary really, we've covered sort of like the 10 key requirements. In summary really, in terms of integration, you want something that's hardware independent, you want something where you can take advantage of the existing infrastructure of the building and take information directly from the AMR systems or the BMS systems, you know, systems where data is already available, minimising your costs, if you like, in terms of capturing that information. Point 2 there is application accessibility, being able to look at your data at any time using the equipment you've got available to you, whether that's your phones or your iPads or really your sort of laptop in your bag. But it is being able to sort of look at that information when and where you have the opportunity to. Top-down reporting, of course, obviously looking at everything really from right the way at company level, right the way down to the last piece of equipment or the last meter at every level of the tree. So you've got a really good handle of and being able to create really good KPIs across the business. Project tracking there is really all about being able to input your energy policy into the software, and then reconcile all of those different projects and all of those opportunities against the policy and see where you are on in terms of your return on investment and all of your different, I suppose, payback times and simple payback times. And then, of course, your regression-based multivariable targeting, having a tool that gives you the ability to be able to create those real accurate baselines that are representative of your business that you can then include in number 6 there in terms of all your reporting and all your forecasting and all your budgeting really. So you can actually sort of create some really accurate budgets and forecasts, like I said, that are properly representative of your building. And then custom reporting. As I said to you, really, you'll have a suite of reports in most softwares. Just make sure that if you do have some unusual or extraneous, if you like, reporting needs, that you have the ability to be able to add those reports into the library of standard reports either sort of outside of the software, or you've got support to be able to do it inside of the software as well from your supplier. And then, of course, exception-based alarms. Yeah, with exception-based alarms, it's been able to sort of monitor your data flows, all your important data flows and all of your different KPIs, and ensure that, of course, if things are not quite right, that you have the ability to be able to sort of track them immediately and provide your corrective actions, but also the ability to be able to, I suppose, like I say, explore all the different variables and the relationships between those different variables and of course your consumption and production. And then coming to your dashboards as well, about having providing the user the freedom to create dashboards that are pertinent to them, to their reporting level, and they can create those dashboards that are relevant and based on the information that they have available to them. And then, of course, finally, your corporate or public dashboards, making sure that, or ensuring that you've got something there that enables you to communicate the message, if you like, of the company's or well, I suppose it is the company or organisation's aims in terms of energy management, and of course communicating that message to those interested parties who you're trying to engage in any sort of energy management campaigns. So, like I say, I've pretty much covered everything off there, really. I'm sorry that you've not had the opportunity to ask any questions, but like I say, that's my email address, my contact details on the screen there. Please feel free to fire away if you have any questions or you want to, you want further information, and I'm more than happy to come back to you with that. I suppose that's about it, really. All I can wish to say now is really thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Please enjoy the rest of the day, and yeah, thanks for joining me. Bye.